Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, tonight is our third da'wah session. نحكي إن شاء الله في خلال 30 دقيقة فقط. We'll just be talking for about 30 minutes, inshallah, so you can go and play with the fireworks. Tonight, inshallah, we'll be talking about how to make da'wah to Christians. Okay? Then maybe in the future, we'll be talking about how to make da'wah to Muslims. And maybe in the last halaqah, before I leave, inshallah, we'll talk about how to give a khutbah and how to give a lecture in an Islamic way. طيب. I've been doing da'wah for so many years, so today's, inshallah, lecture will be briefly some tips, pieces of advice on how to make da'wah to Christians. There are two approaches. The first one is the debating approach. So you meet a Christian and you start to debate with them. This is not a good way, and I will tell you why in a minute. The other one is the educational one. They already know what they believe, so what you need to do is to give them what we believe, what they don't know. Okay. طيب, if you meet someone and you start to talk to them about Islam, so instead of focusing on Tawheed and talking about the pillars of Islam, you start to talk about the Bible and Isa and how wrong they are and how corrupted the Bible is, and you start to make fun of them and make them look like idiots, they will not accept from you. If you tell them, for example, inshallah, you will fail in your math class a big time. Why? Because to you guys, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 1. You will fail a big time. Okay. Or you tell them, you know what? When we go to the masajid, we Muslims, we leave our shoes outside, we take our brains inside the masjid, because everything that is said inside makes sense. But when you guys go to your churches, you leave your brains outside and you take your shoes in. Okay. If you make fun of them, if you offend them, they will shut you off. They will not listen to you. Okay? So you have to tell them what you know or what you believe in Islam and focus on Tawheed. This is the most important thing. Don't talk to them about their faith because they already know it. Okay? Just give them the Islamic perspective. Okay. Usually when I get a lot of tours in the masjid, I usually start with this introduction. Number one, Islam didn't start with the Rasulullah ﷺ in the 7th century, 1500 years ago. This is false. All encyclopedias say the same thing. Islam started with Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century. This is wrong. According to the Quran, Islam started with Adam alayhi salam. So all the prophets, Musa, Isa, Dawood, Ibrahim, all of them are called Muslim in the Quran. Why? Because all of them, they conveyed the message of Islam, that is, have faith in one God, Tawheed, and do good. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. How many times you read in the Quran? So Islam has always been about believing in one God, Tawheed, and doing good. Those who have faith in one God and do good. This is repeated like 100 times in the Quran, or more. No prophet ever called his religion anything except submission, which is Islam. Tell them, for example, what did Dawood alayhi salam call his religion? Davidism? Of course not. What about Ibrahim? Abrahimism? No. What about Musa alayhi salam? Did he call his religion Judaism? Of course not. The word Judaism does not exist in the whole Bible. Google it. The word Judaism is not in the Bible. What about Isa alayhi salam? Did he ever call his religion Christianity? The answer is no. The word Christianity is not in the whole Bible. So these names were made much later in the story, hundreds of years after these prophets. Okay? All of them said the same thing. Have faith in one God and be a good guy. This is what they all said. Where do we find this? In the 10 Commandments of the Christians and the Jews. The 10 Commandments, the Al-Rashid. The first 4 of them say what? Have faith in one God, serve Him alone, don't use His name in vain. This is what the 10 Commandments say. From 5 to 10, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, be a good guy. We have the same thing. The 10 Commandments are mentioned in Surah Al-An'am. قُلْ تَعَالَوْا وَأَتْلُوا مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ أَلَّا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا إِلَى الْآخِرِ. هي دي الوصايا العشر. وموجودة also in سورة الإسراء وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه وبالوالدين إحسانا كذا كذا ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم. The 10 commandments are in the Quran, in Surah Al-An'am and in Surah Al-Isra. At least twice. طيب. الأمر الثاني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول في الحديث الصحيح ما من مولود إلا يولد على الفطرة فأبواه يهودانه أو يمجسانه أو ينصرانه. So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم says every single human being is born with this innate nature pre-formatted to make tawheed, to have faith in one God, tawheed, and to be a good person. This is the default. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, but the parents, they mess up the software, they change everything. And this is statistically true. If you look at the map of the world, more than 95% of the people in this world have certain religious beliefs just because of their parents, not because they chose them. So I tell them, if I were born, say for example, in China, Mustafa. So, based on this, my name would be Mustafa Khattab, and most likely I would be Buddhist because this is what most people believe in China, right? If I were born in Latin America, my name would be Roberto Mustafa, okay? And I would be Catholic because this is what most people believe there. If I were born in Europe, my name would be John Mustafa, and most likely I would be atheist because this is what most people believe over there. If I were born in Egypt or Morocco, most likely I would be Muslim because this is what most people believe. So, following a certain faith in the world has more to do with the parents and the culture than conviction and common sense. And this is what Rasulullah ﷺ says. Also, there is another important observation. Human beings have not been satisfied throughout history with the idea of believing in an invisible God, a spooky God. So what they do basically, they have to see the God. They have to touch Him, taste Him, smell Him, and squeeze Him. So what they did basically, they have always put a face on God, with the exception of Muslims. Okay. This face they put on God could be a human face, like Isa alayhi salam or Buddha, or it could be an animal face, like the holy cow in India and the holy elephant in China, or the crocodile in ancient Egypt, or the owl, or the mouse, and so on and so forth. Some people even put the face of the shaitan on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Satanism, they worship the devil. Why? Because they have to see God, they have to see Him. In the story of Musa alayhi salam and his people, when they crossed the Red Sea, they went outside Egypt. They have been living with the Egyptians, my people, for centuries. So they were familiar with the idea of believing in a God they could see from the Egyptians, because the Egyptians had thousands of gods. The ancient Romans and the Greeks, they had thousands of gods. So what they do after they left, قالوا يا موسى اجعل لنا إلها كما لهم آلهة. They passed by a people on the way outside who were worshipping idols. So the Banu Israel, they said, oh Musa, we want to see Allah, so make a statue for us, Sanam, so can we worship Him, because we can't worship a God we can't see. This is what they said. For Muslims, it is different. Allah is Allah, He is the creator, we are the creation, and we cannot be the same. If you read in Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad, the one we recited in the second rak'ah, it says, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Allah is one. Okay. Allah in Arabic means the God. Al-Ilah, Allah. Allahu Samad. Everything is dependent on Allah, but Allah does not need anyone. He's not dependent on anyone. This is the meaning of As-Samad. He doesn't need anyone. He's self-sufficient. Lam Yalid. He doesn't have children, so Jesus is not His son. وَلَمْ يُولَدْ. He has no father. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. There is none like unto Him. He doesn't look like Buddha. He doesn't look like Jesus. He doesn't look like the holy cow in India and China and all that stuff. Allah is unique. لَا تُدْرِكُ الْأَبْصَارُ وَهُوَ يُدْرِكُ الْأَبْصَارُ. The visions cannot grasp Him, but He grasps all visions. He is different from His creation. Right. When Christians come to the masjid here in tours, sometimes we get students from divinity schools, and they ask me, after I give them the introduction to Islam and everything. So on several occasions they ask me, so what you are saying basically, do you want us to convert to Islam? And I tell them no. And I'm not asking you to convert to Islam, I'm asking you to convert to Christianity. Why? Because if you accept the teachings of Isa alayhi salam, Christianity, you will be automatically Muslim. So I want you to convert to Christianity, then you will become Muslim. Because you have to be the best Christian to be a Muslim. Okay. Simple as that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran, وَلَا تُجَادِلُوا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي أَحْسَنَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْهُمْ. Don't debate with the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, unless there is someone who is unjust, someone forces himself on you and he is starting a debate. So I personally don't like to start debates with non-Muslims, but if they start it, I finish it. The differences between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Okay. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent prophets in different times, and we read in hadith that from the time of Adam alayhi salam to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent around 124,000 prophets and messengers. So every nation received a prophet, according to the Quran. As I said, all of them said the same thing: have faith in one God and be a good person. Isa alayhi salam said the same thing, Musa said the same thing, alayhi salam, and Ibrahim, all of them said the same thing. So when they asked me, is Christianity and Judaism and Islam different? Because it seems they teach different things. Well, it boils down to these differences, but theology. But on the other side, your relationship with God. But the other side, which is universal ethics, be good, be sincere, be kind, be generous, all of them teach the same thing. Okay. But Tawheed is what makes a difference between the three religions. So they say, how come that all of them come from the same source, but they are different? And I tell them, I compare Judaism to Windows 98, Christianity to Windows Vista, and Islam to Windows 8. Different versions, okay? What is different between them is the organization and the graphics. Islam is more organized. It makes people's lives simple and easy. Everything is very clear, no vague teachings. Everything is clear. And this is the difference. So, the differences are, number one, the perception of God. So, for example, in the Old Testament of the Jews, you have a God who looks like humans. In the New Testament of the Christians, you have a human who looks like God, Isa, Jesus. Then in Islam, God is God, humans are humans. How? If you look at the Old Testament, on page 1, the first page, it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, but he got tired on the 6th day, so he had to take a rest. This is why the 7th day was his day off, because he wanted to rest. And this is a human quality, right? Only humans need rest. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered this in the Quran. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ وَمَا مَسَّنَا مِن لُغُوبٍ. Yani we never got tired. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and I never got tired by creating them. Then, when Adam alayhi salam, a few pages after, when Adam alayhi salam and Hawa ate from the tree in the garden, they realized they disobeyed Allah, so they hid. اختفوا في الجنة, اختبأوا. They said in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, Sifr al-Takwin, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started to look for Adam in Jannah. He started to look for him under trees, to call him, Adam, Adam, where are you? As if Allah didn't know where Adam was hiding. Number 2. Also number 3, in the story of Yaqub alayhi salam, it says in, I think, the book of Exodus, Sifr al-Khuruj, that Yaqub alayhi salam had a fight with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the sword, and Yaqub alayhi salam almost defeated Allah in fighting, so God had to cheat to beat Yaqub alayhi salam. And when God was defeated, he gave Yaqub alayhi salam the name Israel. So Yaqub means Israel alayhi salam, Yaqub. It's the same thing. So Yaqub alayhi salam has two names. So these are the teachings about God in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, you have a human being, Isa alayhi salam, who looks like God. The original sin, humans are sinful because Adam alayhi salam ate from the tree. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. No human soul shall bear the burden or the sin of another soul. Plus, in the Quran, Adam alayhi salam was forgiven. فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ. Adam alayhi salam was forgiven. So how can we share his sin if we are forgiven? Salvation, according to the Quran, is based on two things. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ كَانَتْ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتُ الْفِرْدَوْسِ نُزُلًا. So we go to Jannah by two things. By your deeds, your actions, your good deeds, like salah, ibadah, sadaqah, and most importantly, the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tamam? Bifadlillah. So, but according to the Christian belief, you go to Jannah if you accept Isa alayhi salam as your Lord. So I tell them, and I had this debate like about a month ago. I went to a school to give a talk about Islam, so the teacher came to me after and he was not happy and he said, how come you guys have to do good deeds, how to make salah and fast in Ramadan to go to Jannah? But in our case, we don't have to do any good deeds to go to Jannah. So I told him, you are saying basically, if you live a horrible life, if you drink, if you rape women, if you kill, you will go to Jannah. And if you spend your whole life as a Christian worshiping God, you will go to Jannah too. So what is the difference? He said, because of the grace of God and all that, if you accept Him, you'll go to Jannah. Okay, I said, okay, I'll make it clear to you. You are telling me that Mother Teresa, who is a saint in Christianity, she was Indian, I think, will be in Jannah according to your belief with Hitler, because both of them were Catholic. Hitler was Catholic, Mother Teresa was Catholic. He said, no, I think you are right. Good deeds are important. I said, this is what the Quran says, man. What's wrong with you? طيب. Crucifixion, Isa alayhi salam, according to their beliefs, was crucified so we can get the sin of Adam alayhi salam forgiven, eating from the tree. So we tell them that according to the Quran, Adam was forgiven, so Isa alayhi salam didn't have to die for somebody else's sins. Plus, Isa alayhi salam never said any word in the Bible they have in their hands. He never used the word crucified or crucifixion or the cross. All he said, I will have to go so someone else can come and finish the job. This is what Isa alayhi salam said. And the word he used, the person who will come after Isa alayhi salam, in Latin is the word parakletos. Parakletos in Latin means what? The praised one. And what does the praised one mean? Muhammad. So in the original language of the Bible, which was Aramaic, Isa alayhi salam spoke Aramaic, he put the word Muhammad in there, but they translated it to Parakletos, the praised one. Then in the subsequent translations, they changed the word to the comforter, Al-Mukhallis. So they changed it completely so it doesn't mean Muhammad anymore. Okay. And this is a betrayal of the text because when we translate, you don't translate names. So if you say that Mustafa says something, you don't say the chosen one said something. No, you use Mustafa because names are not translated. Infallibility of the prophets in the Old Testament and also in the New one, some prophets, they did horrible things. How? It says, for example, that in the Old Testament, that Lut alayhi salam, who came to fight lewdness in the society, يعني كان جاء يحارب الممارسات الجنسية الخاطئة في المجتمع عنده سيدنا لوط عليه السلام. They said Lut alayhi salam had sex with his two daughters and they got pregnant. This is what the Old Testament says. طيب. So he defeated the whole purpose. He came to fight sexuality in the society and he fell in the same sin. طيب. Sulaiman alayhi salam, wa Dawood, his father, they came to call to Tawheed, right? And according to the Old Testament, in the book of Kings, and in other places, that Sulaiman alayhi salam and Dawood, they used to make sujood to the asnam. This is shirk, okay? Also, Nuh alayhi salam, who came to teach people righteousness, tamam? According to the Bible, he got drunk and naked. Okay. And his children saw him naked. Okay. You have someone like Dawood alayhi salam. He had a relationship with his neighbor's wife. She got pregnant. So Dawood alayhi salam conspired to get her husband killed. His name is Uriah and his neighbor's wife was Bathsheba. These things are not acceptable at all in Islamically. We believe in these prophets, but we reject these stories. For example, in Surah Maryam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about different prophets. رَفَعْنَاهُ مَكَانًا عَلِيًّا صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these prophets are the finest, they are the best. If they do something wrong, nobody will follow them. Back in 2008, hundreds of thousands of Americans didn't vote for Obama. Why? Because they say he smoked cigarettes. So smoking cigarettes for them was something that is not acceptable. Nobody should have a leader who smokes. And I'm not talking about weed, and I'm not talking about anything else. Last night we were having home da'wah. We were visiting some youth in their home and teaching them something about Islam, and we prayed Isha with them. So one of the brothers said, in Islam we need beer and we need weed. So I said, how come? He said, weed, we need tajweed. And beer, we need takbir. So this is the weed and the beer we need in Islam. Takbir and tajweed. Okay. طيب. The last point I want to make, مسألة, and we will continue next time, because we want to keep the 30 minutes thing. ألوهية السيد المسيح. Is Isa alayhi salam God? Is he the Lord? Okay. Did he ever say, I'm God or worship me in the Bible? The problem is, even when I go to churches, even when I go to divinity schools and seminaries, the first question I ask them, have you guys ever read the whole Bible from cover to cover? Because I have read it. I studied the Bible, I studied Christianity and Judaism. Have you guys read the Bible from cover to cover? The answer is no. Most of them, they never read it. Maybe one or two guys will raise their hands, but the rest of them, they have not read it. What they do, they go with the teachings of the church. And the teaching of the church is something, but what the Bible says is something different. Okay. And I asked them, have you read the Quran? If they haven't read the Bible, of course, they have not read the Quran. Okay, logical. So I say, how come you make a judgment on Islam and Christianity if you have not read the Quran and the Bible? Something is wrong with you. You have to read the book to be able to judge. If Isa alayhi salam, because the most important, the most fundamental belief in Christianity is that Isa alayhi salam is God. How come if this is the most important thing, and he never mentioned it even once in the whole Bible, he forgot to say, why? Like say for example, Salah is the most important thing in Islam. Can you imagine the Quran failing to say once, you guys have to pray? Can you imagine the Prophet ﷺ, he was not able to say once, you guys have to pray? If it is the most important thing, he has to say. The Prophet ﷺ said, pray. The last word the Prophet ﷺ said before he gave up his soul was, as-salatu, as-salatu. You have to pray. Okay. The last example I want to give before we leave. I always tell them two things. Number one, it is easier to prove the existence of Santa Claus from the Bible than to prove the divinity of Isa alayhi salam. You can easily prove the existence of Santa Claus. There's no such thing as Santa Claus. But you can prove that he exists from the Bible, but you cannot prove that Isa alayhi salam is God. Because he never said it. Okay. Next time we'll show you that Isa alayhi salam said about himself in the Bible everything Allah says about him in the Quran. That he was a prophet, he was a human being, he came only to the Jews, he was not a universal figure, he didn't know al-ghayb. He couldn't do anything without the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All this is mentioned in the Bible and in the Quran. The last thing, I tell them, if there is a person who lives in the desert, he doesn't know anything about Christianity or the church, then this person who doesn't know anything about the religion comes across a Bible in the desert and he reads it from cover to cover. So after reading it, do you think he will come up with the idea of one God, Tawheed, or three? One. Because there is no three in the Bible. And this is why the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ayah, the verses we recited in the first rak'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقُولُوا ثَلَاثًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nisa, the ayahs we recited in the first rak'ah, don't say three. Why? Because it is not written there. They say it only with their tongue. So he doesn't say, don't read that it is three, don't say three, because it is not there. Allah is one. And this is what Isa alayhi salam said all the time. And we'll finish today. If you have questions, inshallah we can answer them next time. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يعلمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما علمنا. وانصر اللهم إخواننا المسلمين المستضعفين في سوريا وفي كل مكان يظلم فيه المسلمون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins, to accept our good deeds, and to give us sincerity in everything we say and do, and to give us the best in this life and the best in the life to come, and to give people hidayah, and to give us husnul khatim. Ameen, ameen. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه